Some startup origin stories sound like they were literally written for a movie. And this is one of them. Today, we're going to unpack the incredible story of Airbnb, a journey that started on the absolute brink of failure and ended up, well, completely redefining how we all travel. It all kicks off with a problem that I think most of us can relate to. So, picture this. It's 2007 in San Francisco. You've got two friends, they're broke, they're unemployed, and the rent is due. They have no savings, no jobs, no real plan at all. So, what do? They come up with an idea that, let's be honest, sounds completely nuts. They inflate a few air mattresses in their living room and decide to rent them out to total strangers. And look, this wasn't some grand business plan. This was an act of pure desperation. So, these two friends were Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia, a couple of recent design school grads. They noticed that a huge design conference was coming to town, and every single hotel room was booked solid. They looked around their own apartment, and that's when the light bulb went off. They called it Air Bed and Breakfast. And the crazy thing is, it actually worked. They got 3 guests that very first weekend, each one paying $80, which just barely solved their rent problem for the month. What they didn't realize, of course, was that this tiny, almost ridiculous idea had just planted the seed for a global revolution. So you'd think that little bit of success would be all they needed, right? Well, when they tried to get professional investors on board, they hit a massive, massive wall. It turns out nobody else believed in the idea. In fact, it was the complete opposite. This one question, right here, this pretty much sums up the reaction they got everywhere. I mean, venture capitalists literally laughed them out of the room. The whole concept just seemed too weird, too risky, and just too unbelievable to ever work at scale. And it wasn't just the investors. The market seemed to agree with them. The company was on the verge of total collapse. The website kept crashing, bookings just dried up and stopped completely, and pretty soon the founders were deep in personal debt. They'd maxed out all their credit cards just trying to keep the lights on. They were right back where they started, totally broke. So what do you do when your startup is failing and you are completely out of cash? Well, if you're Brian and Joe, you become serial entrepreneurs. And I mean that literally. This is where the story takes a legendary and kind of weird turn. This was during the 2008 U.S. presidential election. So they designed and sold their own limited edition novelty cereals. Obama O's, The Breakfast of Change, and Cap'n McCain's, a maverick in every bite. It was absurd, it was hilarious, and honestly, it was their last-ditch effort to raise some money. But the hustle paid off. Can you believe it? They sold over 800 of these hand-designed boxes for $40 apiece, raising a critical $30,000. But this was about so much more than just the money. It was proof that they just would not give up. This bizarre little stunt showed investors a level of creativity and resilience that you just couldn't ignore. And the lesson, summed up perfectly by Brian Chesky himself, was crystal clear. Their most absurd idea, born from pure desperation, taught them that creative thinking could get them through almost any obstacle. That cereal money and the incredible story that came with it bought them just enough time to get a meeting with Y Combinator, the super famous startup accelerator. And their acceptance in 2009, well, that would prove to be the single most important turning point in their entire journey. The mentor there, a guy named Paul Graham, was pretty skeptical at first. But he gave them a $20,000 investment, and way more importantly, he gave them a single piece of advice that would change everything. Stop coding in San Francisco, get on a plane, and go out and actually meet your customers. And they didn't hesitate for a second. They took that advice to heart, flying straight to New York City, which was their biggest market at the time. They met with every single host they could find. They listened to their problems, took professional photos of their apartments to make the listings look better, and basically rebuilt their company one single relationship at a time. You see, this hands-on obsession with their users changed the entire game. All of those early struggles weren't just obstacles they had to overcome. They became the very soul of the company. It shaped their identity, and it drove all of their innovation. And after that turning point in 2009, wow. The growth was just astonishing. The company exploded. By 2011, just 2 years later, Airbnb was in 89 countries. It wasn't just a website anymore. It had become a global movement built on this idea of belonging anywhere. And the result is honestly one of the greatest disruption stories in business history. Airbnb became the largest hospitality company in the entire world, a multi-billion-dollar empire, all without owning a single physical room. So when you look back at the whole journey, the takeaway is so clear. Airbnb's story isn't about getting lucky. It's about resilience. It's about creativity that was born from pure desperation. It just goes to show you that sometimes the moments that feel like the absolute end are actually the beginning of your greatest story. And that leaves us with a question for you. When you're facing a wall, what's the cereal box idea you haven't tried yet? What's that crazy, seemingly absurd solution that your biggest struggle